Hey, everybody, it's Colin. Welcome to the Friday Designer Spotlight. Today we have a really cool edition. We are going to be talking to Kelly Fridline of Kelly Fridline Design. She is a chief architect guru and mentor, and we are going to just kind of talk about some of the differences, pros and cons of both 2020 and chief architect. Of course, with me as always is Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Colin. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. We've got a lot of snow up here.
Yes, we do as
Actually,
well.
I'm down here.
We do as well. We've in New Hampshire, we southern New Hampshire have we've got about 10 inches of snow.
Yeah.
So not horrible. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kelly. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Colin. How are you?
Doing all right. Where are you at?
I am in Farmington Hills. It's just outside of Detroit.
Okay. Yep. So did that storm come from your direction? The one that we just got?
We did it. I think that the lakes nicely bulked it up for you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, because we got a dusting, but enough where we took my son sledding for his first sled ride.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yard yesterday, but you can still see grass peeking up underneath the snow. So.
Hey, as long as there's enough for the sled to go over it, that's all it takes.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do me a favor, because you are you're not a kitchen person, so you're not really. I mean, I know you're a member in our group, but you just kind of lurk. Tell everybody a bit about yourself, if you would.
Sure. I am the owner of, like Colin said, Kelly Fridline Design. I hold a Master of Architecture from Savannah College of Art and Design, and I graduated almost 10 years ago. And within that time, I've had the opportunity to work for some pretty amazing firms. I went out on my own about 3 years ago, and since then, I've had the opportunity to work on anywhere from 20,000 square foot restaurants in Texas to fully custom homes and residences, obviously they're the same thing, and to assisting interior designers and kitchen and bath designers with their construction drawings and renderings. I have completed all of my architectural training hours, which is over 5,800 hours, and 90% of it being signed off by a registered architect. And I just have to sit down and take the 5 beautiful exams. But needless to say, I was introduced to chief architect 5 years ago, working for a design build firm. And it's funny because I have now I've done probably almost 300 hours of one-to-one training with interior designers, learning either chief architect or home designer software. And so I've really learned the details of the interior design and kitchen bath industry in comparison to what I've learned from the architectural side of the industry. So there have been many times where I feel like I'm almost that ambassador, and I've had interior designers actually hire me as a consultant for them during the process, because sometimes there's just a hard crossover between interior design lingo and architectural, like archispeak. So yeah, but since then I've really, as you said, kind of become this kind of guru for chief architect and home designer. And it's more of a guru specifically tailored to our industry, to interior design and kitchen and baths. So
right, yeah. And architecture is really a little bit of knowledge of a lot of areas, isn't it? It's of course you're focused on the structural and the envelope, the entire outer structure, and but you do have to know a lot about everything, really. I mean, a little bit, moderate amount about everything, not a little bit, but a moderate amount about everything.
Architecture is interesting because it encompasses so much of so many parts of the building design industry, that there's so many specialties. So you can have an architect who's extremely specialized in education and schools and public, and then you can have somebody else who really loves residential, and if they do commercial, it's more of a hospitality side of things, which is what my background is. So that's why my comfort level, if I were to ever do commercial, which is obviously statewide based and basically requirement and credential based what I can do, since I'm not licensed. But the architecture firm that I worked for, which is in upstate New York, it's in Saratoga Springs, to give you an idea, they were designing their own millwork profiles. When I was there, they did a house that the drawing set, the CD set for this house was so detailed, there were over 120 pages.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
It really depends on the firm.
right. Well, you're in a completely different stratosphere when you're designing your own molding profiles
Yes.
that's for those that don't completely understand that'd be like creating a crown molding from scratch, basically just telling
and having it mold.
Yeah, and having it, putting it through the molding cutter, and it's custom knives, it's everything. It's that's a multi-million-dollar project at that point, and the architect's getting paid a pretty penny too. So, all right, well, thank you for the background, and before we get started, I just wanted to preface by saying that you work exclusively on Macs, do you not?
No.
Oh, you don't?
I don't.
I thought you did. Okay.
My desktop is Mac.
Yeah.
It's actually an older Mac. So it's, and then my laptop is a PC.
Okay. So you run both versions of Chief. You run do you run the Mac version on your desktop?
There's no versions. It's exactly the same interface, no matter what you're looking at. So I just toggle my license back and forth.
Right. But the what I'm driving at is the Mac version is a native Mac version. So so it's so one of the things that's on the wish list of many people is a 2020 version that is native Mac. And the only solution is Boot Camp. Which for those that don't know what Boot Camp is, you're literally booting your Mac into Windows, and not Mac OS or Macintosh operating system. So that means that your hardware needs to be pretty spiffy in order to run 2020, because you're running Macs tend to, I don't want to get too deep into this concept, but Mac operating system is nowhere near as much overhead as Windows. So the hardware doesn't need to be there is hardware that is the same hardware as Windows, but they're much more expensive for a Mac that has like a Core i7, that 10th generation Core i7 with 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD is way more expensive in the Mac world than it is in the PC world.
Well, and the interesting thing from the chief architect side of things is they just released some details about X13. So every late winter, early spring, chief architect comes out with upgrades every year. So when I started using chief architect, they were on X7, and now we're on 12, and 13 will come out probably February, March timeframe based off of previous. But they announced that because Apple was basically building their own in-house graphics card, and no longer using NVIDIA, and Apple wouldn't provide them the specs to be able to proof anything prior to the release, that there's this small upgrade that's going to be available in X13 it's called real-time. The upgrade is called real-time ray tracing, and it's for their drawing blank. It's an abbreviate. It's called PBR, and it's just like a little step, and it's supposed to just kind of enhance it that much more. And it's doing a background ray trace. But the thing is that because Apple was not providing their specs, that option is not going to be available for Mac users.
Right.
It may be an upgrade, but also with that, there are plenty of interior designers and architects and users of this who are either going to have to upgrade their graphics card if they have that capability, or get a new computer to have this one little feature, which
Right.
does not mean that the software is obsolete, by the way.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And it's a rendering thing, which, that's something that I think everybody with a complete package that does everything from the ground up, including rendering, that's always an issue. It's an issue for everybody because that when it does everything, the rendering can't be spectacular. I mean, it's not possible to provide a package. It would be prohibitively expensive if you had a package that did completely photorealistic stuff that people charge thousands of dollars per rendering for. So, and that's what everybody wants, and that's what everybody sees, and that is just not realistic. So, I think something in the 2020 world that we have always had an issue with is rendering and specifically getting the lighting right. Up until version 12.1 of 2020, we had this sort of obsolete-ish rendering engine called Redway. And it's really difficult to do the lighting. And 2020 would come up with some solutions. Like the most recent one is called OmniLight, which is just a ball of light that you stick in the middle of the design, and it gives you omnidirectional light to help you light it better. But they've now taken a rendering engine that they created in-house for their European product called Fusion. That's called Easy Render, and they've now made that available on 2020 Design Live, which is their newest version. And we don't need to get into that with you at all because you don't need to understand it at all. But it's essentially allowing cabinet manufacturers to put their catalogs in the cloud. And we'll get into cabinet manufacturers' catalogs shortly.
That's the NVIDIA update.
Okay. Yeah. So this is sort of similar to that. So anyway, so I just wanted to touch on a few different things just to kind of show people the differences between 2020 and Chief Architect. And one last thing we were talking about right before we went live is that there's different markets for the two products really, and there is overlap. But with 2020, if you're selling cabinetry, if you are a dealer and you are selling cabinetry from a manufacturer or manufacturers that have catalogs for 2020, you really need to have it because it's the only way that you're going to completely design a space and get a price nearly instantly, and then be able to order that nearly instantly and even use the online ordering tools like Masterbrand has their own. There's also Live Order. There's all kinds of things that you can do that really automate this. So anyway, so the main differences are Chief Architect is an architectural software. 2020 is a cabinet sales tool that does a lot more than just allow you to sell sell cabinets, but people want to know what some of the differences are. So I'd like to just start with, I'm going to share my screen real quickly. And just for those that are, so there are folks in Kelly's, Kelly has a Facebook group, Presentation by Design, that is a lot of Chief Architect users, and she's going to replay this in her group. So we're going to, I'm going to be showing some 2020 stuff that most of the people watching this right now live know. But this is more for the benefit of just folks in general that want to compare the two softwares. So I'm just going to do my share, and I turned on sharing for you, Kelly. So as soon as
I'm obviously a professionally abridged version of the differences between them, because I'm sure
it's very abridged. This would take us 3 hours. This would take us 3 hours easily to show people what this can do, what the differences are. So, but I just want to show some of the biggest issues that people on the 2020 side have. I just want to turn off 3D shapes in my floor plan because it's going to slow me down considerably. And I'm just going to start a new. So really it's just placing walls. And when you start a design, you get crosshairs and you immediately can start drawing your walls. That's always been like that in 2020. Again, if you're doing just a quick design and you're throwing in some cabinets to show a builder, you don't need to go to any major trouble in order to do this. So we have our placement box down here, so I can just type in 120, 96, and if we're rendering, we want to do a complete space, but I'm just going to do the L right now because we're really just doing an L. So I have that, and then I want to put in a window. So I go to my local browser and I go to my room and I have my windows here. Now, one of the things that I spent a lot of time in lumber yards selling millwork, and I know some of the window lines fairly well. And 2020 has gotten a little bit better at it, but I still don't have so if I want a double hung window, double hung window shows us over here what it looks like. I'm going to throw a double hung window above where the sink's going to go. And I want it to be 42 inches high. And I want to put it, say 72 inches from the left to the center. So 72, because it's going, everything in 2020 is clockwise. So 72, and then it's going to be, say, 42 inches wide. And there we go. So there's my window. And it's a double hung. It's to me, because again, I've kind of a millwork geek. It doesn't really look like a double hung window. I mean, it actually looks like two awning windows, one on the top of the other. I mean, it's what we have. I actually use casement windows I actually have a YouTube video that shows how I do that, but I actually use casement windows for my double hungs. And I just have to, turn off the hardware and all that stuff. So that's our windows. We're a little bit behind, I think, in windows. Doors, they just updated recently. So we have more interior doors because we're doing mostly interiors. Our interior door selection is much better than our exterior door selection. And we have quite a few available now. We have a single panel shaker, 2-panel shaker. You can see them over in the other side. They're previewed there. But I'm going to say this is a 6-panel raised because that tends to be what most people use. They've also given us the ability to change the hardware on it. It was just a lame looking lever for a long time. And it's now a better looking lever with the ability to change that to a knob, which actually looks pretty good. So kudos 2020, nice interior doors now. So that's it. So I've placed a door, a window, and I have a little bit better looking door than I used to back before version 11.12, which is when they introduced the newer doors, and I can change this to a knob. So Kelly, I'm going to toss it over to you. If you want to go ahead and share, could you just do the same thing quickly?
Sure. So what I'm going to show you is, so there are 2 different versions of Chief Architect. Actually, there's 5. And it's totally based off of, it's saying I cannot share screen. Okay.
You should be able to know. Yep. Sorry.
All right. So I'm going to open a new plan. So I'm actually going to use Home Designer Pro, which is pretty darn similar. I have Chief Architect as well. This is a layout I did in Chief Architect. So, but the interfaces for both of them are pretty darn similar when it comes down to it. So are you guys seeing my...
Yes. Yep. We got you.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen. If I'm looking over here, it's because the screen's on another
That's
one.
okay. No, that's fine.
So this is, I'll just use the Chief Architect one actually, since it's open. So Chief Architect, you have to keep in mind, unless you're using the interiors version. So there's Home Designer Architectural, Home Designer, I think Suite, Home Designer Pro. And then there's Chief Architect Interiors, and then Chief Architect Premier.
That's
the only 3
a lot of versions to keep track of.
Yeah, that's a lot. I tell most professionals that the lowest version to go is Home Designer Pro. And that's the version that provides you the ability to actually put things on a title blocked layout sheet. The other ones, you are just sending things out as a JPEG. And as we all know, so much of our industry is dimension based, and it doesn't matter how many notes you put on your drawings saying that they're conceptual purposes only. That's for your reliability. You're still going to get someone with a ruler going to town on it. Right. So might as well try to keep things to scale as possible. But with Chief Architect, you have the ability to draw a bunch of different walls. So this is the exterior, their default exterior wall. Within that default, and their default is a 2x6 siding. You have the full wall structure. So as you can see, you roughly have the siding, you have an air gap, you have the 2x4 stud wall, and then you have a 1/2 inch drywall. You can actually go in and pick which wall you want as a more defined. You can set this also as defaults when you're first starting your project. So
Just
if I were
curious,
to,
I'm going to stop you for just 1 second. I realize that you can share two screens at once, but I want to make sure that I wanted to see if there was split screen or anything. So I'm going to stop sharing. My bad. All right, continue.
it's okay. So within that, as you can see, as I'm clicking in here and I look at the wall type, I can just see right here, it goes over 1/2-inch lap siding. You then, if in fact the exterior wall changes and is different, you have these pre-made wall types built for you. So let's say that maybe you're doing a 2x4 brick. So the 4 indicates the dimension depth. So you have a 2x4. Within that, it builds the brick depth. It builds the insulation into it. You have the house wrap, and it's really so that if you're using the full version of Chief Architect, you technically can do what's called res checks, which I don't generally do, but you have that option, and that's where building those details in are going to help you with it. So let's say we do brick. If I click on this, it's automatically going to update that wall for you. Then I can go ahead and rather than necessarily clicking something else, I can grab this diamond over here and I can increase this segment. So something I tell interior designers all the time when I train with them is, as you can see, these dimensions show up as you're drawing, which can be really handy. But you have to keep in mind as to what version you're using and what dimension settings, because the dimensions and how they're taken are dependent upon those settings. So for most interior designers, the kitchen and bath designers, you're going to want that interior surface to surface. And
That's
like
right, yep.
you said, Colin, that's one thing about 2020 is it keeps it nice and clean. You know that that exterior edge that you're getting or that surface edge is representing the drywall, right? Versus with Chief Architect, you have that full wall construction in there.
And you're actually seeing the drywall. There's
right.
It's there. So you can,
Well,
you have an exterior wall. Yep.
That actually depends on what version you have. So if you are buying and you're using Chief Architect interiors, which many interior designers will buy because they're in the belief that the NKBA settings are set up there. The only thing that makes it in NKBA settings are their layers. So as you can see, this just changed because NKBA believes you don't need to see the full wall construction.
Right.
So you're only seeing surface to surface. And, but unless I change the dimension defaults to NKBA, those temporary dimensions, that's what we're seeing here.
Right. It's still the outside of the 2x4 wall. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So if you're not cognizant of those things, that in itself, just from your exterior walls, you have over a foot of inaccuracy while you're drawing.
Yeah. And then, you also have, so a lot of what we do when we're remodeling is, so if you have a door or a window, 2020 always wants to know to the casing, because Chief Architect is designing blueprints, it's going to be to the default is going to be to the rough opening.
Again, that depends on which version you have.
Right.
So if you have Chief Architect interiors, which is a lot of what most interior designers buy, because of the NKBA settings, it is actually set to go to the casing. Okay. And as you know, that's an arbitrary number, because if you're going in there and let's say you're in New England, right?
Yeah.
So in New England, you could go in and, if you're in, let's say, Boston, you could turn around and go into a 18th century or 19th century farmhouse that has had multiple generations of additions on it. So within the main structure, you could have that 19th century house that has the casing profiles of whatever would have been standard at that point in time, which let's say it's 3 1/4. Yeah. Then you could have a 1910 edition that has bungalow profiles of 5 1/2. And then you could have a 1970s that has 1.5 inches. Well, the thing is that if you're using Chief Architect interiors and you're not aware of that, so if you're not aware that you can go into your default settings, you can come down to your windows, you can click edit at the very start, and you can make sure that those casing profiles are set. And if you're not taking that into account with each addition, then again, like your windows are all arbitrary. They're all going to be off.
Right.
Versus by knowing to take that into account, you can actually go into your dimension settings and you can go ahead and make sure that you're either going in doing all your takeoffs from the outside edge of your windows, not from your casings. And you would set that up. So we can go in here and I'm just going to use the 1/4 inch and we're going to click here. This is actually like the main spiel I go over from the very start is dimensioning. And you can go to locate objects and you can decide where you want your dimensions to snap to. So you either have surfaces, which is to the drywall, or if you're going in putting tile or anything on it, it's going to snap to that. Or what they call is the wall dimension layer, which is essentially your stud. And then you have the ability to snap it to all these other variables. So again, openings. As you can see, because I have Chief Architect Premier, it's snapping to the sides. So that is the opening. So that's the outside edge of the window frame, right? You have rough opening, that would be to the stud. Casing would be to the outside edge of the casing. So this is something I always have to go over because I wasn't used to that.
This is something that a lot of 2020 users crave, and it's not something that it does. You know, this level of dimensioning has been an issue for a while, and you know, when people are in that crossover between, you know, selling cabinets and also doing the work and having to produce job drawings that, you know, has to give accurate rough openings and things like that. That's not there. So that's really one area where you kind of need both products in order to do that. So if you wouldn't mind just showing briefly the window and door placement, just because so full disclosure.
So for the windows, you can actually build a bunch of different windows. And it's really based off the variables. On top of it, sorry, this is my crazy user catalog. I've probably got thousands of things in here. But they have Chief Architect and Home Designer have manufacturer catalogs. Within that, you can also get, you know, you have the ability to get Owens Corning, which is obviously going to be roofing tile and siding. You also have Therma-Tru, Thermador. You have True Style doors, so that you have their catalog. You also have Andersen Windows is available, and I'm pretty sure Eagle. Maybe I don't have them downloaded.
So
there's a few. So you have Marvin Windows and doors.
So you could put in like for example, an Andersen TW 210-46.
Well, what you would still need to go in and put it in there. So Andersen's going to have their lines, right? So you can go in, you can click gliding window, and you can pick what that is. You still need to make sure you have your Andersen.
Yeah, but see, you can see right in that, just in that black and white, how that one is sliding in front of the other. You know, one, and that's anyway.
And to give you an idea, even if you don't quite know, right? So even if so for like home designer users, they don't have access to the cabinet catalogs. That's like the one thing that really kind of, one of the major things that breaks them apart between Chief Architect users is the cabinet catalogs aren't available. But you can really customize certain things, and a lot of it is call out related and elevation detail related. But let's say that you haven't downloaded this, or maybe you're using JELD-WIN windows and they're not available, or you're trying to order doors. Let's say you want to do a quad slider, right? That has low profile. We're going to drop a double slider in here. And as you can see, its default for a double slider exterior is a 5'6'8" door. And I can click on either side, and depending on which side of the door, it shows me different dimension snaps. Now, I did change the temporary dimensions. If you guys watched, I changed those temporary dimensions to snap to the surfaces now. So as I need to, if I wanted this closer, I can actually click on this, and if I type in 2 feet, it's going to drag that over 2 feet for me. Now, if I want to have this extend and turn this into a big quad slider, I can open this guy up it automatically knows that because it's a slider, it should really be a glass door. It's not going to do a closet door for you. So let's say that we want the width of this to be 10 feet. I don't even know if that's how wide the actual room is. And so you can see it just defaults to 2. Let's say we want to have this slimmer profile. So maybe you're doing a little bit more of a contemporary look. We can actually change the profile and the thickness of the frame for the door. The next thing that you can do is you see where it says door panels custom. We can add 2 more to the side. And we now have the quad slider. In our views, we can show it open. We can actually show it how much we want open. So if we want it to be 100%, and it will layer it for you. And then let's say that maybe it's a little bit more of a traditional house. The one thing about that is frustrating to me about Chief Architect is that they're only full divided, or they're not even semi-divided light. They're just, you know, all the mullions are like right up here, and you can see where the glass goes in between. So, but you can turn around and let's say you want it to be a 4 and a 2. You can add those to it. You can change your size of them. So now, and I clicked enter, sorry, but I can have it snap to the center. So if you are ever an AutoCAD user, snaps are very, very similar. And on top of it, I need to push this down. I'm going to grab this camera here and we'll just angle it out.
Moving into the territory that, yeah. So it's an 1.5 muntin. I saw you increase that. Yep. And it's fully open.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you can see, yeah. So it's fully open. So, you know, if we were to, if I were to pull this guy up, I
find it fascinating, guys.
Yeah, this is, I think we said it earlier. This is Karen's first exposure to it. Yeah. Full disclosure, folks, I have been a Home Designer Pro user for the last little over a year. I haven't used it as much as I would like, but I've gotten decent at it. So I'm trying not to interject too much because I want Kelly really to talk about this, and I'm playing the devil's advocate for 2020. So
yeah. I could watch Kelly design this all day.
I know. So we should probably move on to, so this was pretty easy. Now, what you can't show, because I know you have 2 screens, but you can't show this because of the way that we're broadcasting this. But you could actually take that perspective screen and move it over to your other screen, couldn't you? The perspective tab. So your perspective.
I could. I don't think that way, but I could. So I can have it so that they're going dual. And that's what I tell many designers that, you know, are maybe struggling with understanding. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this one back up here. And you can do it so that they are layered. So let's say that, you know, maybe you think upwards and you need them to be stacked. So you can have it so that they stack. So which is what I tell a lot of course, it doesn't want to work. So it's side by side is available, which is great for designers that are trying to learn that if you're using a 3D software, toggling between the two is really important. Otherwise, if you're just modeling in 2D and you're not taking into account and going back and forth and checking, you're not really getting the full ability and the full reason why.
Well, let's go back to 2020. I'm going to just go to my screen sharing for a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and open a perspective window. We can't actually do what you're describing. We can. So I could actually have this off to the side or on another screen and watch what's happening while I'm modeling. But the program doesn't like that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of discussions about 2020 crashing. And if we were to leave this open and continue moving stuff around in here, it might actually cause a crash. So that's one of the things. That's why I said you could pull that over into the screen and you could work on that and it wouldn't crash. So it would be nice to be able to have the 3D window open while you're designing, but it's really not that important for what we're doing if we're designing a kitchen. So, you know, if we're designing a kitchen and we need to, you know, so I'm going to go, we talk a lot about cabinet manufacturers, and I have a lot in here because I do a lot of freelance design, virtual.
I'm not seeing your screen, Colin. Are you screen sharing?
I did. Maybe I have to stop. Maybe I have to stop Kelly's.
Oh, maybe. I'm
Yeah.
seeing your screen, but
Oh, you are? Okay.
yeah, I can
Maybe it's
stop.
when I'm talking. Can you see it now, Karen?
Yeah.
Now I can't see yours.
Oh, that's weird. All right, so maybe we should only share one at a time.
Go back to where you
Okay.
were.
Yeah. All right.
Whichever works, guys.
Kelly's gonna stop sharing
I
hers.
don't need to see it.
Oh wait, now I see it.
Okay.
It was behind all my other ones.
Oh, okay. So but Karen, you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and I'm just gonna grab Omega, only because we know Omega has catalogs for Chief Architect. So I'm gonna go and I want to do a base corner, easy reach, Susan, and I did the asymmetrical for some reason. That's okay. That's probably what I want to do anyway, because this is so tight to the corner. So, I pull in that and I want a sync base. So I want space. So, sync appliance, standard sync base. That's probably only going to be a 30. I don't want anything on it. But see, Kelly, this is just it wants to know if we want to attach a sync to it. And it gives us kind of lame syncs to attach to it. We can attach syncs from other catalogs that are not lame, but
you have to know which one and the name of it as you're building it.
Right. So I'm going to just say none for now. None. And then so so I'm centered on my window, but it will center it if I tell it to by going like this, clicking on the window and hitting enter. It will center, which I already knew it was centered anyway. And then I'll see I have my perspective window closed. So we can look at it as we're building it. But the neat thing, and this is really for the folks that are going to be watching this that don't know 2020, as this is happening, this is actually building a list of cabinets as we go. And it's doing it in the background. And the way it's doing it is each one of these has a database entry, and each one of those database entries has a number of prices based on door style and sometimes box construction, that sort of thing. But we can look at that by going under variables. Oops, try and move this out of the way. And we have pricing, and it's priced based on door style. And door style, there are different number levels of door style. So a number 5, it's $26.58. Number 5, $26.58. Those are the same price. And it has our Lazy Susans inside of it automatically because that's what we selected. So this is building a list of cabinets and prices as we build the cabinets into the space. So once I have all the cabinets placed and countertops and moldings, I will be able to generate a price, a list price. There are ways of going in and changing all of these. There are lots of different reports and things that you can do. But I'm gonna stop it and switch it back over to Kelly. If you could pop in and show us what a cabinet entails.
All right, let me just open up my window. All this craziness.
Nice.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's a nice rendering.
All right, I'm going to actually go ahead and use a project so that you guys can see also the level of detail that you can get for your drawings. This was done in Chief Architect. So as you can see, my graphics are a little bit more of an AIA-based graphics. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, though, if I come over here, and I'm just using it because these are all tied together. So I'm going to double click in here because this is linked. And now I have this plan with all of my crazy cameras that are saved. But I'm going to just turn that layer off real quick.
Yeah, so and layers is something that 2020 users have been asking for some time now.
It's very similar to AutoCAD.
Layers on and off, yeah.
So this is the view of it, and as you can see, you can get the same similar labeling. And this is a kitchen I designed. This is in Austin, Texas. So as you can see, there's some interesting stuff to it. But if we were to go into the first floor plan, and let's say that we want to grab this big drawer cabinet that I drew in here, and we open this guy up. You can see the details of it. You can see the size and scale. You can actually come over here to components, and we can put information in. So if you know what retailer and you know the price, you can do a markup, those sorts of things, but you still have to do the cost evaluations with it.
Right.
So to give you an idea, if I were to come over here, since Colin, you used Omega, I have Omega loaded, so I'm not quite sure which line you used, but
it was actually the full access, Omega full access. So I can, so you can, yeah. So we can pick a door style. I'll pick a door. I won't go back on screen, but I'll pick a door style. Give me a second.
So let's say that, let's see, I'm going to just grab one. So I'm going to go with this Brentwood one, right? So
Brentwood, okay.
the
I'll do
only
the
thing
same
that
thing.
you have that makes it Omega are the door and drawer styles.
Right.
So I'm going to drop I will come over here. I'll just go ahead and start a new plan real quick. And I will drop a base cabinet in. This is just Chief's very basic. They really like color in their drawings. I am very much like black and gray are about all you should be doing, but, and it's floating in outer space. You have different abilities to see different rendering and visibility styles. So I'm going to move over to what they call a vector. So with Chief, I can go ahead and for, let's say, the door, I can hover this over and I can change the door style and I'll change the drawer style. And then if I want that much more detail, I can go ahead and click on that base cabinet. I'll open it up and we can customize it even more. So let's say we want this to be 3 drawers. I can click on 3 drawer. I can split it horizontally. I can split it horizontally again. And then I'm going to go ahead and equalize it. So we have this nice bank of drawers that are nice and even. The thing is, as I'm doing it, it's reading that they're drawers, but it's not necessarily updating the amount. So if I were to say the total, the price is, $500, something like that. That's $500 each. It's not doing it for each drawer. I have to go in there and do that, right?
Right.
Yep. All those little details that are in here, you would have to come in and do that yourself. And then to be able to get the breakdown, you can either do a schedule or you can do a material list. But that material list, that can be a hot mess. So really, there are people that get quotes and try to build estimates from chief architect and home designer, but it's not really something I generally recommend, just because you have to really understand current pricing models and the region that you're pricing it for.
That's
versus
very important. Yep.
2020, you're getting the actual manufacturer. I'm assuming whatever your account.
Yep. So that's the list, right? So it's the way cabinetry goes, and this is pretty universal throughout the industry, is everybody gets a list price that's the same. And then what you get from your local sales rep, your regional sales rep, is you get a cost multiplier based on a landed cost to where you are. So for example, if they're manufacturing it in Pennsylvania and there's a dealer in New Hampshire like myself, that will be one cost multiplier that will factor in freight, the distance from Pennsylvania to New Hampshire. If that same one's going from Pennsylvania to Oregon, then that's going to be far different, because they're actually going to be paying more than the dealer in New Hampshire, because their landed cost is going to be different because all of that's figured in, all the transportation. Typically, sometimes there's separate freight calculations, but the easiest and best way to do it is to have a landed cost based on where you're located. So so what I would generate from 2020 at this point, I only have a couple of cabinets in, but I would generate a price list. I would go in and this is, you just select that as Brentwood. So I'm going to ask you to give me control, give me screen sharing. So that's all done totally differently on 2020's end. That is done with the share. That is done with the, come on, move. That is done with, I have something open. That's why. Let's close that. There we go. So that is done with styles and pricing. So most things are done globally with 2020. So when I'm changing my door styles, I'm changing them globally. So we have all of these different things. So we're basically selecting all these things in mass. So
you can do that in Chief.
Right.
Setting your default settings, but a lot of people don't necessarily know what that is if they're designing within the software. I tell most designers, if you have a good idea of what it is, do it from the start. It's going to
Right.
save so much time.
Yep. So let's see. So here's Brentwood, and it's showing me what Brentwood looks like. So I selected maple, I select Brentwood, and then I tell it I want a 5-piece drawer front. I want this is the frameless version, so I have a choice of white or wood grain laminate. I'm gonna do wood grain, and I'm gonna tell it I want a stain, and I want desert, and I don't want any glazed or brushed finishes. I don't want any special effects. I want to do a flat, I'm gonna do an ultra matte sheen. And then I can select my outside door profile. So I'm going to do a profile M, and I can select my hardware, and then I submit that, and that makes all those changes globally, so that when I go back into my render, I have those things are applied. So it's now a Brentwood door, matching drawer front with the outside profile.
And that's the difference. So once you start plopping cabinets in, if you haven't taken that into account, then you have to go in and reassign those details to each box. Versus if you set them in advance, then it will do everything moving forward.
Right. So now what this will also do is I go to my reports dialog and I go to quote, and what I get is, of course, there's only going to be 2 cabinets in it, but I get a list price based on all of the things that we selected. Brentwood, which is a level 5 price door with a 5-piece drawer front, because that's something that is, I believe it's priced. No, actually, I think that's actually standard. So there's no extra charge for 5-piece drawer fronts here. But sometimes the doors, when you select a 5-piece drawer front, there's a charge per drawer, and it counts up all of those drawers, and it gives you that charge. So it knows that this is the price level for Brentwood, and we can trust that because that's been verified by the manufacturer, because the manufacturer provides these. And then maple is a 10% upcharge. The ultramatte's 5%, and there's our knobs that I picked. So that's our total list. So all I would need to do is apply my cost multiplier to that, which is typically a 3-digit decimal. So it's in this case, I believe it's 0.365 or something like that. So I would simply go 4496.25 times 0.365. And that's my cost. 1641.13 is my cost on that. And it was done immediately after setting the cabinets in. Right. And it would also do it based on if I put toe kick in, I need to put toe kick in, crown moldings, and multiple crown moldings. And unfortunately, we're not going to have time to get into any of that in this. We should probably just set aside some time, honestly, to record one, just to have for posterity, and just go through, just kind of pre-plan. And we had talked about that 9 months ago or something like that at the beginning of the pandemic. And,
it is one of the most requested things that comes through like my Google Analytics is people wanting to know the difference. Yeah. And it's totally understandable. So it's very interesting how the difference is, and what you get based off of what you're doing. Yeah. I think the thing is it is a key thing to know, because between Chief Architect Premier and 2020, I think the pricing is pretty comparable.
So we can actually talk real numbers, because the 2020 Design Live is they've simplified their pricing structure, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's $16.95 per year per user for 2020 Design Live, and that's the full version that allows you to get the manufacturer catalogs. And then you have to get your manufacturer catalogs. They provide some, on their website, but for the most part, you have to get them from your sales rep for the cabinet line that you're doing. And a lot of them have a gated website where you can just download it yourself. Okay. You just get a login.
It's like the old school suites catalog from like 10, 15 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's and the 2020 Design Live aspect of it is, and I'll just kind of show that quickly again for those that have not seen 2020 in a while or don't know 2020 at all. So we have the cloud browser, and I wanted to go over a little bit of decorative stuff. But 2020 comes up with their own cloud of decorative items from their cloud, and there's a ton of different things. There's I'll just kind of show. There's.
I am actually kind of curious if Chief is working towards that with the NVIDIA stance that they're going with, because of I'm pretty sure it's NVIDIA Omniverse or something like that is one of these cloud plugins for a lot of software. I know Revit and SketchUp and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. So, there's some Christmas decorations, and actually the Christmas tree that's behind me is from the cloud. So, there's lots of decorative stuff in here. Now, I'm just going to say this to 2020 because I love you guys. It's, you don't have a lot of designers picking these things out, I don't think, because you do have a lot of decorative items, and they're getting very good, but there's still a lot of things that I think people will agree with me are lacking in the cloud. But the newest thing with the cloud is they've started working with cabinet manufacturers to put their cabinet catalogs in the cloud. And that has a ton of benefits. The biggest one is because it's pricing and because it's pricing is very timely. If they make a change to their catalog and their list pricing, it's instant. Everybody gets access to it. With the old way of doing it, which are the catalogs that are installed locally on your local hard drive, this is the summer of 2020. You can see here. When they up that, I think there's a newer version of Omega. I'm not positive, but that you have to watch that constantly, and you have to make sure. Now, if they have a price increase and you don't install the new catalog, you're in trouble. If they have a 4%, 2% price increase, then your price is going up by 2%, but you're not charging your customers that 2%. So it's very important. So in the cloud, the cloud-based ones, which there are a few that they make available to everybody. Oops. Let's see. Where is? All right, Castlewood cabinets. I don't know that line. Oops. But where are we? Castlewood cabinets. I want to say select only. Oh, come on. One more time. Castlewood cabinets, select only. And then we start seeing the cabinets that are available in their line, starting with the very beginning of their catalog. And there are 214 items in this line. So there's
a lot of those details look very familiar to me.
Do you?
Yeah, those elements. I'm like, oh, I've seen those before. Yeah. They're in Chief. So
right. And I think the manufacturers create the CAD blocks, the 3D CAD blocks, right. And then they make them available to everybody. And then each manufacturer has their own way of bringing it into their software. Yep. So we have, if we wanted, this one's only decorative items. So I'm not seeing any cabinets. Choice cabinets. Who are they? And if any of these manufacturers are watching this, I'm sorry, I don't know your line. But there are so many manufacturers, it's hard to know everybody's line. So here we have in the cloud, these live on 2020 servers up in Montreal. These cabinets are there, and then I can pull these and drag them in. They briefly are a cube until they fully download, and then they are. Oh, it's taking a while. Probably because we're taking up bandwidth with the Zoom call, probably. And then I can go in here and I can say attributes, but it won't let me change the attributes here because I have to go to the cloud configurator, which is over here. So that's a whole nother ball of wax, but it allows so many things to be done in the cloud. And so I want to because I'm also a chief architect in the home. Yeah, right. I'm losing it.
User,
it's
Home
Friday.
Designer Pro, thank you. Home Designer Pro. Oh, I'm fading fast. Kelly, if you could just share one more time. I would like to just show something that we've been asking 2024 for a long time, and we don't have it. But in a 3D perspective, you can nearly instantly change your textures. And the only thing we can change in textures in our perspective windows is flooring and ceiling. Everything else is done globally through the global attributes. But am I still sharing? Shoot.
So is this your kitchen, Kelly, that's in your virtual background?
Yep, and this
Yeah,
is
it's beautiful.
I built this in my home designer course.
It's
So
gorgeous. Yeah.
this exists. Thank you.
So for anybody that wants to get, so I would say that again, you need 2020 if you're selling cabinets. If you're selling a volume of cabinets, you need 2020. But if you're doing more than just kitchen and bath spaces and you want to go into bigger rooms, you want exterior walls, you want, more robust windows and stairs, and I can't even get into now what the differences are. Even Home Designer Pro gives you that, and Kelly teaches courses. So after we're done live, I'm going to put a link into the comment section for Kelly's courses, so you can go check them out. And Home Designer Pro, you can easily bring that into your toolkit. It's $600, and you don't have to update it as much as you might have to update 2020 if you're not using it that way. But so did you change texture already? I wasn't really watching.
This is the PBR. So
Okay,
this is the rendering option, and it just shows you how fast.
And the easy render from 2020 is at this level. We don't have full access to it yet. It's only in beta. So we don't have all the controls. Like you have the ability to mess with the lighting controls. We don't have that in easy render yet, but it's coming, folks. So we have the ability to do some of this. But if you wouldn't mind just changing like the wallpaper texture.
Sure.
That ceiling is phenomenal, isn't it?
Thank you. And that's a texture. Nice, yeah. So other than the structural, the ceiling is a texture I made. So you can see that it is, actually, I didn't make this. It is a tongue and groove. Mm-hmm. It is a default tongue and groove in Chief Architect. So you can tell because it says core catalog files, and then I just painted it. So the abilities to change textures are different between Home Designer and Chief Architect. So I have Home Designer Pro open right now. So what you can see is I can go to dull, and you can see it's not, it's a little bit duller or dark. I can go to dull, and what that does is that's going to give you a little bit more of a bump mapping in Home Designer. You have the ability to add transparency to it, and then emissive is backlight. So if you are really wanting something to look like it's a TV, right? So just by changing those three aspects in that view, it changes how it looks even in standard view, or this is PBR. So to give you an idea, you can see this reflection on the wood floor at the bottom. If I come in here, I can come down here and go to that properties. If I hit dull, it's going to change it so that it's not shiny. And then I'll leave it at brightness. And if we click OK, it's now going to change how that texture uploads in that model.
Yeah, it looks more matte finish. Yeah.
As for user catalog, mine is insane. It may not be, mine's not insane in Home Designer. If I were to pull this up in Chief though, right? So if I were to pull this other plan view up that I have, and we were to talk about what you can do with your textures. So this is a model that.
So if you wanted to change that backsplash right there behind the hood and how easy or hard is that?
It's pretty easy. So for me, I can just type in tile based off of how either it's labeled in the library or how I've labeled it. I have, let's say that you want to use this tile bar tile that I built using an image. I hit the spray can. And it's the same thing, so I can do it based off of the images. So those aren't, this is the one that was there. So a lot of it is making sure that you set up the repeat correctly, having Photoshop in there. If you wanted to do black penny tile. The other perk with Chief that is now available that wasn't before is you can actually get your hatch. You can build your hatch based off of your photo. So to give you an idea, if I were to come to vector view, no, let's do standard view to start. So you can see this is the image. It's not the best repeat because it was the closest image I could find. But as you can see, this is Chief Architect. The properties that you're able to manipulate your textures, you have significantly more, right?
Wow.
You have all these bump maps. Your materials are far more defined. So, you know, if I wanted this to be a mirror, I can set it up to be a mirror. All those different things, I generally just keep it. A lot of times I'll just use the general mapping and just change it. But to give you an idea, like this is a bump. If I invert it, you can move it back and forth and you can hike up how it's red in there. And it's based off of the light to dark comparison. And those are things that aren't available in Home Designer Pro that can make
Gotcha.
a huge difference into how your rendering is viewed. But what's really nice with Chief Architect is, let's say you don't have a pattern and you really want one and you're not super like, this has to be perfect lines. You now have the ability to have that pattern red based off of the photo.
Wow.
So you now have
That's
this
cool.
nice hatch, and we can change it. So maybe we want the line to sit back a little bit more, right? So if we click OK, now what we want to do is we're going to open up this elevation, or this plan. I can grab an elevation. I can use a wall elevation. So there's different elevation options and section options. If I use a wall elevation, basically what that is it's a wall, room defining wall to a room defining wall is what's going to be red. I can aim it, point, and that hatch is now available in the view. And I can even turn off the color behind it. I can turn the line weights up. And if I were to send this over to that layout I have, it's going to just kind of drop somewhere.
So I want to make this clear too, folks. If if you're selling a lot of cabinets and selling a lot of architectural jobs, it's worth it to have both full products. I'll tell you what one major thing that you can do is you can export your cabinets. You can export your whole layout from 2020 and bring it into Chief, and then go from there. So you can use 2020 for what its major strength is, which is pricing and ordering cabinetry. And then you can take that and bring it into Chief and get all of these other benefits and take it to the next level. It's just amazing, and and horrifying at the same time, just because it's so much to learn. But we know a gal. So
Kelly, you do beautiful.
For
Your
anybody
work
who
is-
wants to do 2020.
Yeah, your work is beautiful, Kelly.
So
Thank
I'm going to
you.
stop your sharing.
It's
So
beautiful.
I don't normally have a hard stop on these, but I unfortunately do today. So Kelly, thank you so much. And I'm serious. We definitely need to do the full throwdown between the two, just kind of comparing side by side what the two do. And just seeing this side by side, never having done this before, honestly, they are complementary products. They're not really competing products. Right. I think that Chief Architects and 2020's competition is their potential customer buying a new showroom space or buying a new display or spending that money on something else. They're not each other's competition, really.
And I have this conversation all the time too with people that are trying to decide, like, do I get Revit or do I get Chief Architect? And really it's, what does your team look like? If it's just you don't need to bog yourself down with something that is very team-based. So the real thing to consider when you're looking at any type of software is, what are your business goals? And it's the same thing when you're going to buy your computer. What are your business goals? Not just now, but it's safe to assume that the computer you're purchasing, if you're doing anything 3D, may have a 3 to, if you're lucky, a 5-year lifespan. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
So, plan on investing in it, but do not buy a computer based off of the minimums.
Never,
hike it up
ever.
past the recommended.
That's one of the biggest discussions in our group, quite honestly, is, you have to have a robust budget when you're buying a new computer, and you have to know that it's not going to last more than 3 years. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, well, I have a 3-year-old gaming computer.
Yeah.
That's not, that's like saying I have a 3-year-old car. I mean,
to give you an idea, this Mac that I'm on, it is a refurbished Mac from 2013.
Yeah.
I bought it in, when did I buy it? 2017. It's pretty much like probably on its last leg. I probably got maybe a year left in it. It was a $6,000 investment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and that was for a pre-used computer.
Yep.
So that's just, it's, and the Mac versus PC. And I tell people that it's like, if you are a Mac user, the thing to really consider is I bought a PC, but I probably spent the equivalent amount of time trying to relearn Windows.
Right.
So those are the things to consider is what is your pricing and your ROI.
Yep. Yep.
So.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. As I said, I'm going to put a link to both Kelly's website and her training courses in the comments that will probably be later on today. So thank you everybody for watching. I'm going to stop the stream now. This is our last Designer Spotlight for 2020. Karen, aren't you sad?
Yeah, it's really sad. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you so much, Kelly.
We're not going to do one on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Obviously, I said last week, I'm going to try and do something fun. I don't know yet. At noon on both of those days. I don't know if it's going to be a watch party. We might all watch Elf together next Friday. I don't know. But we'll maybe if people have opinions, give me your opinions. Let me know what you'd like to do. But everybody have a Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. If you don't, enjoy the holiday, enjoy the time off, enjoy the family. Everybody stay safe and have a happy new year. And we will see you again on January 8th for our Designer Spotlight. So I'm going to stop the stream now and take care, everybody, and we'll see you soon.